In this lecture, you'll learn how to archive and compress files and directories in Linux. tar is the most widely used command to create compressed archive files that can be moved easily from one disk or machine to another. This command has a large number of options, but you need to remember only a few of them so you can quickly work with it. tar is a complex tool used to both archive and compress files, as well as extract the resulting archives. Before continuing, I want to make a distinction between two terms, archiving and compressing. Archiving means that if you take 10 files of 100 kilobytes and archive them, the resulting single file is 1000 kilobytes. On the other hand, if you compress those 10 files, you might find that the resulting file has a wide range from only a few kilobytes to close to the original size, depending on the original file type. In general, text files have a higher compression ratio. tar alone only archives the files. It does not compress them as well. But using specific options, tar can pass the files to the compression algorithm and the final result will be compressed without using another dedicated command for that. Let's get practical and see the most used options. The most important ones are C, which creates an archive, X, which extracts the archives, and T, which displays the contents of the archives or its table of contents. In the next example, I'll compress an entire directory into a single file. It will also compress every other directory inside the specified directory itself. In other words, it works recursively. I'll run the command as root because I'll compress the /etc directory and there are files that can be read only by root. tar -c z vf, the name of the archive, etc.tar.gz, and the path to the directory, /etc. I'm hitting enter. Now you are seeing in the terminal the process of the command. This is what the -v option, which means verbose, does. This is optional, but it's helpful. If I run the command again without the -v option, it will run quietly without displaying anything on the screen. I'm running it again without v. It hasn't displayed its progress. By the way, these archive files are called tarballs. Let's take a closer look at each option. C means create an archive. Z tells tar to also compress the archive using gzip or gnu-zip compression. This is the most used compression protocol on Linux. By the way, that's why the resulting file has a .tar.gz extension, a double extension. However, sometimes a .tgz extension is used instead. Note that the type of the file is not given by its extension. It's only helpful to visually find out what kind of specific file is. In this case, it's an archive that was further compressed with gzip. And F allows you to specify the file name of the archive. In other Linux commands, it doesn't matter the order of the options, but in the case of tar, it's mandatory to specify the archive file name after the option F. If I write the -f option at the beginning, I'll get an error, like this. The archive was created in the current directory, but you can create it anywhere else by specifying a path. For example, I'm creating the archive in /tmp. Another useful compression algorithm is bzip2, which creates smaller files but at the cost of speed. However, nowadays computers are so fast that most users won't notice much of a difference between the times taken by gzip or bzip2 to compress a group of files. To use bzip2 instead of gzip, simply use the J option instead of Z. It's common to use .tar.bz2 for such an archive. tar.bz2. tar is frequently used to compress a single directory, but you could also use it to compress multiple directories, multiple individual files, or both. Just provide a list of files or directories instead of a single one. Like this, tar-czvf archive.tar.gz and the files etc password, etc group, var-log, the message. I have archived and compressed 3 files. Of course, I can add the directory as well. There are some permission denied errors. So I run the command again with sudo. In some cases, it's useful to exclude some files from the archive. Imagine that you make a backup of a directory and want to exclude music, video, or other non-important files. To do that, use one or more exclude options, like this, tar ---- exclude equals, and the files to exclude. For example, star.mkv. Another one, ---- exclude equals .config, and ---- exclude equals .cache. Now the options, the name of the archive, and the name of the directory, the user's home directory, /home/student. It will exclude these files from the archive. Perfect. Once you have an archive, you can extract it with the same command, which is tar. I'm going to extract the contents of an archive in the current working directory. So tar -x, which comes from extract, and the same options, z, v, f, and the name of the archive. The archive was extracted in the current directory. This is its contents, etc. The etc directory. If you want to extract an archive into another directory, use the capital C option and the destination directory. I'm creating a new directory called my backup, and I'll extract the contents of the bzip2 archive in that directory, mkdir my backup, and tar x j vf, the name of the archive, etc.tar.bz2, capital C, and the destination directory, using a correct path. And it was extracted in that directory. Let's check which algorithm has compressed better. And sudo du -sh etc. Okay. Let's take a look at the archives. We notice that bzip2 is better. 1.1 divided by 1.3 multiplied by 100. I did the math and found out that bzip2 occupies only 85% of the space occupied by the gzip archive, and the size of the original directory is 12 megabytes. So the compression ratio was 1.1 divided by 12. Approximately 90%. Note that these two compression algorithms are incompatible. If you want to extract a gzip archive using the -j option, which is the option for archives of type bzip2, you'll get an error. Specify the correct option, which is z for gzip and j for bzip2, or allow tar to auto-detect the compression type by specifying no option for the compression algorithm. So tar minus gzip and the bzip2 archive. We cannot use z for archives of type bz2. Specify j or no option at all. To see the contents of an archive, use the -t option, which comes from the table of contents. When you want to check if a specific file is in the archive, pipe the output of the previous command to grep. I want to check that the configuration file of the SSH daemon is in the archive. So tar -tf, the name of the archive, and pipe grep /sshd_config. And it's there. But the configuration file of the Apache web server is not there. There's this directory, but it's not the configuration file of the web server. The examples shown in this lecture are extremely useful because the etc directory contains the configuration files of the entire system. In my opinion, it's mandatory to have a backup of this directory so it can be restored if after an update or change something goes wrong. And I'll show you a trick. If you want to have versions which are backups made in different days, then you need to insert the date into the backup file name. For that, you need to do a command substitution like this. tar -cjvf, the name of the archive, etc minus, and now the trick. A $sign, a pair of parentheses, and between parentheses, a shell command. Date, a white space, plus %F. .tar.bz2, and the name of the directory. And I'll run it as root. See how a new archive with the current date in the file name was created. What the command did was substitute the date command with its output. So date, white space, plus %F. The command was substituted with this output. We'll dive deeper into this in the shell scripting section. Lately, I've seen more and more files with the .xz extension. These are files compressed with the LZMA algorithm, and tar will auto-detect the compression type and extract the archive. Let me show you a quick example. I'll download an archive of type XZ from gnu.org. It's the core utils archive. It contains all the basic Linux commands. The archive is in the current directory. And tar -xvf and the name of the archive. And it's extracting the archive. In most cases, you'll use tar to compress files using different compression protocols. However, note that there are also dedicated commands that only compress or extract files and directories using gzip and bzip2. Gzip is used to compress a file or a directory. Gunzip is used to extract a gzip archive. Then there's bzip2 and bunzip2.